Welcome back. Let's continue building our RoboFriends app. Now, up to this point, if you look at our index.js, well, that was a lot of copy and pasting that we did. If we had a lot of robot friends, imagine having hundreds of these that we have to constantly copy and paste. That's not very efficient, is it? Also, if you remember our diagram over here of one-way data flow, we always had a parent, such as an app component, that had children, that have their own children, and so on and so forth. So using that knowledge, we can have one big app component that have different children so that we make each component small and reusable. Let's go back to our example. Now that we have robot.js, we ideally can list all these 10 users. The way we do that, let's have a card list component so that if we import a card list component, which is a parent of card, then we can just render that instead of all these cards. So I'll say card list. And again, we'll have to create it. So we'll say new file, card list.js. Again, changing it to our Babel syntax. We'll do import React from React. And I'll make this a little bit bigger. And again, we'll just say const card list equals. It won't accept anything for now, but it will return. Well, what should it return? It should return the cards, right? We can just copy and paste this, put this in here. Let's fix the indentation here a bit. Now, card list will be the one that returns these cards, and index.html will just render card list. If I save this, well, I'll guess that card isn't being used, so we can remove it, and robots aren't being used. But we can use the robots now to pass that as robots equals the robots array. Card list is accepting a robots prop. If I save this, everything's working, but I'm getting this error because, well, as you can see, we didn't export. If we go back to the card list, export, default, and hopefully by now you're starting to get the hang of it. There's a lot of repetition here, but each time, as long as you learn the syntax, we're creating these components nicely. And we get a ton of errors because we don't have any access to robots and IDs and, well, card for that matter either. So let's import card from, again, same directory, card.js. Robots isn't defined. We know that card list receives robots now, so I have access to it in the props. Or I can destructure it and say that we have access to it with robots. If I save this, look at that. I have everything back the way it was. But it's not all of them, is it? We're only grabbing the 0, 1, 2, only 3 of them. And as we saw in robots.js, I have 10. How can we do this better? Let's make this a little bit smaller so you can see. It looks like we want to do some sort of a loop, right? We want to loop over the robots and create a card component for each one. How can we do that here in React? Let's start off by adding another variable here. We'll call it const card component. And within the card component, we want to say that robots, we want to, well, what do we want to do? When we do a loop, as I've said before, we want to map, right? We could do for each as well, but I always recommend doing map. And within this map, each robot gets this. So we get a user every time we map through it. So we can say user should return, again, because a map needs to return. It returns this, right? We want to return a card component. I can copy and paste this right here. And within the return, I can just say now, instead of robots index 0, do we have the index? Well, yeah, because you remember, the second parameter that we get in a map is the index. So I can say user and I for index. And now within robots, I'll say I for index. Each time, the first time around, this will be 0, then 1, then 2, all the way to 9 to include our 10 robots. Let's see if this actually works. If I add card component here, you remember that we have to wrap it in curly brackets because it's JavaScript, so it knows to evaluate. If I save this, looks like it's compiling successfully. I go back and holy moly, we got ourselves a card array. How cool is that? That was incredibly fast to do. We just used our common sense and JavaScript knowledge, just use map, to return multiple components. I hope you realize how powerful that is, and that is why React is so popular right now. We're able to use JavaScript to return these HTML elements and do things really, really fast. If I open up the console here, I'll see that I get a warning. Each child in an array or iterator should have a unique key prop. And there's a link to it if you want to read up more on it. This is a special case that you just have to remember. When working with React, the way the virtual DOM works is it keeps track of what all these cards are. But without having something called a key prop, if some of these cards get deleted, React won't know which one's which and will have to change the entire DOM. Versus if it had a key prop and says, oh, this one gets removed, I can just remove this from the DOM. Remember, we want to minimize the amount of work that we do to the DOM. So when you do a loop, it's just something you have to remember. You have to give it a unique key. In our case, we can just say I, which is index. If we save this, we have to wrap it in curly brackets again because it's JavaScript. And there you go. Now we don't have the error anymore. And let's just make this on a new line just so it looks prettier. And because we're returning it on multiple lines, we want to wrap this in a bracket, right? All right, and that's better. So this is working nicely as we want it. I want to show you one thing. Because this is JavaScript, anything we put in these curly brackets is JavaScript, including comments. Well, we can just copy and paste this entire thing, remove the constant, and just add it within the brackets. If I save this, it should still work like it does. And this is another power of React. React makes you a really, really good JavaScript programmer because other than this JSX syntax, everything else is just JavaScript. So we're able to create a card list component that lists cards, and all we need to do is pass it a prop of robots. And we just made this a ton cleaner. Very cool. All right, that's it for this video. More things will happen in the next one. See you in that one. Bye-bye.